Hi there. Welcome back to the Real Film Chronicles podcast. As always, I'm Nathan.
And I'm Brian.
And in this week's very special episode, we're going to be taking a look at a little film called Talk to Me.
Right in time for spooky season, Halloween. What a way to sort of like kick off the season. When a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill until one of them goes too far and unleashes terrifying supernatural forces. We briefly discussed this before recording. This is marked as a 2022 movie. That's when it sort of hit a couple festivals, but had a wide release worldwide in, I think, June or July of 2023. So, for all intents and purposes, this is a fairly new movie. Straight from Australia. Fantastic cast in here, fantastic direction. There's a lot of really good things going on here. A lot of good buzz. I missed it in theaters. I was kind of I think one of my local theaters is still playing this, but since then, it's come out on video on demand and digital releases. So we're both able to catch it that way. And man, I mean, I'm just going to throw out right off the bat here, like this movie, like still exceeded my expectations for all the hype, because I'm a little wary now. Whenever I'm all Letterboxd or Twitter, I'm looking at these people I follow who are like in the film sphere, so to speak, and they just keep talking about Talk to Me over and over and over again, how good it was. And then you watch it and you're like, my God, that was good. And I should throw out, we're going to talk about spoilers as always, right from the beginning. So if you haven't seen this movie, please go check it out before we go any further here. What was your first thoughts on Talk to Me?
Yeah, I hadn't heard a lot about the movie, but what I had heard was that it was really good. It was, a lot of critics online or people online, in forums where they had really good positive things to say about this. And it was like, okay, I'm always kind of wary when I go in, and, the expectations are set so high that sometimes it's, it can skew your viewing of the movie, because it's like, oh, I expect it to be amazing. And then it can affect viewing. But I'm pleased to say that, it did not affect my viewing. I went in, I had a great time with this. I know we're going to usually save our full remarks until the very end, but man, this was, this very well may end up being my favorite horror film of 2023. It was a really cool, unique concept in that genre. And it's just done really well. Like, great cast. I don't know if any of these actors are. I recognize the one actor, the mom who played Eowyn in Lord of the Rings.
Miranda Otto, yeah.
Miranda, I am no man, Otto. I don't know if the other actors are like super big in Australia, or if this was like more kind of an indie film with like kind of up and comers, but like. Everyone in this movie did a great job. There was a great feel to it. The mythology was fleshed out just enough to make the movie work without, kind of beg other questions. It was like, wonderfully ambiguous as to how everything worked. But I was really, really pleasantly surprised about this movie, not really knowing what to go in and seeing only a few screenshots in the trailer the trailers didn't really do it for me. And I was like, I'm always wary of the hype, but yeah, Talk to Me was definitely a hit.
I kind of, when I first saw some of the previews and people talking about it, I thought it was going to be more like the Monkey's Paw type of horror story, where it was just like, they're going to interact with his hand and it's going to grant wishes and whatnot. So I was really pleasantly surprised when it wasn't that at all, and it was more the supernatural spirit possession angle. Was really neat. The rules of the world that we could talk about here is pretty interesting. I think you hinted at it there, where it offers just enough that the movie can cohesively function and make sense based on the rules they set up, but also knowing that this like artifact, the hand itself, not everyone knows everything about it. There's no rule book that comes along with this game, right? Like it's a mysterious piece, and they're still not sure. I like that description at the beginning said it was an embalmed hand, but that's only like possibly a rumor, because these people who have it are just like, oh, like we heard a rumor there's an actual hand in there. Just like, oh yeah, it's like a hand of so and so.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
love.
nobody actually knows for sure.
It was just these punk kids, and there's an obvious analogy to drugs, right? Because they take this
Yes.
hand, and when they get possessed, it's like a high for them, right? So it's like it's kind of like that, where it's getting passed around from teenager to teenager, or like different groups of teenagers, and there's like this mythology that's built up. It's like, oh, it was a medium's hand who was embalmed
Yeah.
and then encased in porcelain. And like the one dude's like, the other hand is out there somewhere. And it's like, what do you mean the other hand's out there somewhere? Like it's all
Right.
nonsensical. But like the hand itself, I was like, when I read the description, it was like an embalmed hand. And it took this thing out. It's like, that doesn't look embalmed. But then they described it. But it's really
Yeah.
cool. It's like, they kept things super simple, right? It was just like this porcelain looking hand with a bunch of weird writing all over it. And then it's like, it's sat in such a way where you could like shake the hand essentially.
Yeah. Which
But
is
like,
great.
it was great. It's like, is it? Yeah, was it this cursed item? I think there was obviously allusions to like the idea of the monkey's paw in terms of like the hand as an artifact. They kept the rules to the world too super super simple, right? It's like you light the candle, you shake the hand, you say talk to me, the ghost or whatever appears, and then you say I let you in, and then the thing goes into you, like you get possessed by the ghost. I think it almost forces the ghost to possess you, right? Like they don't have really a choice in the matter, because every single
They
time
don't seem to. Yeah.
it works. And then I don't know where the 90-second rule came from, but the first dude, the two kind of troublemaker kids who have this thing, like, yeah, we were told that the rules were, after 90 seconds, if you take it longer than 90 seconds, you risk being fully possessed, and then the demon, like the ghosts, like have your soul for the rest of your life, kind of thing. It's like really simple rules to remember, but really, really effective in the way that it was played off. So you don't have to think about, oh, how does this work and how does that work? It's like, no, you light a candle, hold the thing, say the words, and then stuff happens and you can get right to the story. It was phenomenally great, and they used the ambiguity just enough, and there was some humor in that as well. It was really, really well done. I was very, 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 very surprised. Yeah.
It was like nicely humorous throughout the movie, right? It had a good angle to it, because it's just like there's a lot of ridiculousness happening here, but there's also a lot of serious things happening too.
Yeah. Well, that whole montage of them going in,
which is great,
and getting possessed, and it was them like essentially getting high. They would get high off of being possessed. Such a really cool, really unique take on the whole, the horror, like the haunting spirit world kind of genre. I was like, that's so cool. And I would never have thought of that. And it just goes to show that, there's always space to play in these genres. There's always ways to be creative and invent and reinvent. And yeah, it was such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
It was really, really well done.
It like reinforces that thing where it's just like, oh my goodness, all these ideas for these movies, they've all been played out. We've seen everything a million times, and maybe we're just missing like the direct inspiration for this, but this felt really original. And that was really exciting to watch and see, and just them doing things a bit differently. It just was really effective. And backed by like really good characters here, because underlying you have Mia, who's like this main character here, who like just falls in love with going under like the hand's influence, and she's going through her own personal hell of like her journey through grief and whatnot. It was just like
with her mother committing suicide.
Yeah.
That was, that the theme tied in really well. And like how the whole trouble starts is, somebody gets possessed with her mom's spirit, and she wants to talk to her longer because she didn't have the chance to say goodbye. And that kind of sets things off. But yeah, like that, I think having that context for the main characters of like where they're at kind of psychologically, the dead mother and the suicide could have been played up. That, it can get kind of cliched, especially in the horror genre. You see that played out time and time again, but it didn't feel cliched here. It felt fresh and original because of the context, right? It made sense with the character, and the character Mia, like you could tell it felt like she was, it was a year on, but like that kind of stuff that stays with you. You saw this, like, she was interacting with people, but you saw beneath that kind of veneer, she was still going through that process of grieving. And it was, the actor was really well done. I mean, the actor was really, really good. The writing was really well done. That part of it, that part of the tragic backstory could have come off as cliched and tired, but it really, really worked in the context of the movie to give that character some depth and background and motivation.
And I'd love that, like, the spirits are kind of that classic, like, they're tricksters, right? And you have a situation here where we don't know the rules. Like, you're being possessed. How much access does the spirit have to your mind? And they sort of
they asked that question too.
Yeah, they sort of guess. And like, I think the one boyfriend is just like, yeah, I think, like, they play on your fears. They play into your mind. They know what they're doing, and they're trying to trick you. And it's like, she gets that seed of a doubt that her mom didn't commit suicide, and it is really implanted there by the spirit, I think, because it's like, you're trying to justify why her mother would do something like that. And of course, the spirit would, like, tackle that and be like, oh, I can latch onto this and, like, live in this body longer and longer. Because her first time going under, she goes past the 90 seconds, not by very much, right?
Yeah.
And we don't, as an audience, we're like, oh my goodness, she broke the 90-second rule. What does that mean? And it's like,
at first nothing really happens. It's like, oh, and like even the kids are admitting is like, oh, the 90 seconds just kind of arbitrary. That's what we were told.
Yeah.
But like nothing
because
really,
they don't know.
They don't know for sure. Like it's all up in the, and that's a good way for the writers to give themselves some space to play as well.
Yeah, which was played out so well.
Yeah.
And, no, I love the spirits, their behavior. I mean, we can go to the scene there where, like, the younger brother of Jade, he's a bit younger. I don't know if he's like 13 or 14 or something. He's like explicitly, like, his older sister's like not letting him do this, and you can, I mean, that allegory for drug usage it's absolutely perfect, because you bring your younger sibling to a party. Everyone's like passing around a joint, and it's like, no, you can't. It's like, your family. You shouldn't be doing this. And it's not until she leaves the room, and Mia was just like, no, yeah, go ahead. It won't hurt. We'll only do like 50 seconds for you.
Yeah, and
Mia, it's just at least get a taste for it.
And the context is Mia's really close with the family, and she's almost like an older sibling to. What's the kid's name again? I can't remember the kid's name. I should, because he plays a central role to the
Riley.
Riley, yeah, and she's almost like, it's this kind of big sisterly thing. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. Instead of the 90 seconds, we're not even gonna get close to 90 seconds. We'll do, 50 seconds. You get the taste of it, and just
and it turns out
humor him.
To be the most horrific scene I think I've seen in so long. It was just like, my God, it was hard to watch. It was so brutal. Lots of violence going on there, and
because that's when you see it was really well done, because you see the look on the kid's face, and then Mia's just like, oh yeah, say the words, like, I let you in, and the kid looks at her, it's like, okay, and I let you in, and then the spirit starts kind of talking through him, because every spirit's different. The one was like made the dude make out with the dog. The other one was like, looking at this kid and telling him, was like, oh, you watch out behind you, this guy's gonna kill you, and all this stuff. Like every spirit's kind of, some of them seem malevolent and some of them seem more benign. This one is the one that turns out to be, apparently, it's never really confirmed, but it's supposedly Mia's dead mother. And she starts talking directly to Mia, calls her like kind of a pet name, use a term of endearment that only her mother would know and use with her. So she starts, like, oh, don't blow out the candle, which ends the ceremony. Don't do that yet. I want to talk to my mom, because there was that ambiguity around her death that ends up making Riley go over the 90 seconds. And then, the spirit takes over, and it's just brutal. The way he bangs his head down on the table in front of him. I don't know how they staged that, because it's like a lower budget, like, I don't know if it would be considered like an indie film or like mid-tier. It doesn't have like, it's not playing with Marvel budgets, I'll tell you that. But to do that, to make it look so realistic and so brutal and so violent, like, I don't usually like flinch or get, affected by violence in movies, but like that was just, maybe because it was like a younger kid too, but the way it was done, it looked so real and so brutal.
It was quite visceral. Yeah. I almost lost my lunch when, like the demon possessed child, he's reaching at his eye and starts pulling at his eye. I had to avert my eyes. I couldn't watch
the
it.
socket and starts pulling the eyeball out. I'm like, are they gonna go full eyeball pull? I was like, oh my god, it didn't all come all the way up, but it was enough. I hate anything to do with the eyes. Yeah, I hate it.
There's not a lot of stuff that's going to make me like hide my eyes in a movie these days, but that one had me. Yeah, I think I had my hand was over my eye at times. Like,
no, keep your hands away from your eyes.
It's true. Oh, even think about it now. It's just
the spirits are manipulating you, Brian. This is like what your first instinct? Put your hands closer to your eyes. Are you crazy?
Oh my goodness, it was so effective. And to answer your question about the budget, $4.5 million budget.
Yeah.
Which is really stretched really far in this. They did really well with the budget. I think there's a lot of practical effects at play here. Like the spirits will sort of show up, and they're not like active spirits. Like part of the thing is you open the door with a candle, say, talk to me. And then you open your eyes and the spirit will just be like standing in the room with you. And it's all like just a practical people in like really gnarly makeup.
Really gnarly.
And no one else can see them. It's like, they're not really moving around because you invite one to possess you, then the spirit is no longer visible. It's in your body now. Then you depend on your actors. And that's what's amazing about that. A child actor, Joe Bird is his name. He was born in 2007. This kid is young. And it's just like right. that possession scene was insane. Like you just see him go through all these emotions.
Oh, yeah.
And you see a bit of his character come through, the possession itself, the spirit coming through. It was like, man, that was maybe one of the best possession scenes I've seen on screen before. It was really crazy.
Yeah. And then when was it his sister's name? Jade comes back in and it's like he's banging his head against this other table again. I'm just like, and everyone's like, they're not doing anything. And it was like one of those things that felt so, it was really frustrating watching like Mia and these other two dudes not step in and do anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But it also felt kind of true to life. Like it was such a shocking thing if you were in that moment, like, and you knew that it was like, oh yeah, we were playing with like ghosts and possession. Like, of course you would hesitate. It was like, I hated the characters. I was frustrated with the characters, but it made perfect kind of logical sense. Like if I were in there, it's like, would I be rushing over there if I knew he was possessed by a ghost? Like what is he going to do to me? But Jade runs in. Yeah.
You don't know all the rules around it too, because I feel like,
oh yeah,
like if you go over and touch him or something to pull the hand apart. And I do feel like she touched the hand at one point, it was like maybe that got like multiple connections into her because she was seeing the spirit like without touching the hand. She wasn't like fully possessed anymore, but there was questions, and they sort of address it later where during that madness, the candle, which is the door that the spirit comes through, wasn't necessarily closed properly, right?
Yeah, they didn't blow
and
it
they're
out.
like, oh, maybe in order to get the spirit out, we have to reopen that door and then close it properly and do sort of like the reverse order, which is still even kind of ambiguous if that even worked at the end. But I love that. I love that where it's like in a drug party, someone might be ODing, and it's like, yeah, you may not step in to help. Your first instinct may be, let's get out of here because I don't want to be in trouble.
Yeah, you don't get in trouble, or maybe you don't even know what to do because you're still high. It's like, yeah, that the whole analogy with drugs, like, yeah, it made perfect sense. It set the context, and it set the context for the characters. Like they're probably still reeling from their experiences. They're probably messed up or still like quote unquote high. And like, what do we do? What do we do? They haven't experienced that before. No one's gone over the edge. No one's OD'd before on this particular drug.
And what's great there is that you would think, well, if I bail out of this party, I want to do it not because what we're doing is illegal. Like taking a spirit in, there's no law on doing that, but no one's going to believe you. And when you're like, what happened to your friend here? He beat himself up and you left. It was just like, well, he was possessed by like at least a spirit or two. And they're like, yeah, okay, that's not right. And they address it later on because that's the mother's first thought. You got him high, you put him on all sorts of drugs. It's all your fault. And then they do all the toxicology and nothing comes back. He was completely clean. It was just like, then it becomes like a psychological thing. Like we're going to explain this in other ways. But,
well, I think the mother, even at one point, when she kind of quote unquote forgives Mia, because she blames Mia because she thinks Mia gave him drugs, which kind of, there's an irony there because it was actually her fault, even though it wasn't her fault, but it was. And the mom tries to rationalize it by, he's mentally ill, trying to hurt himself, all the self-harm. It's like she's trying to rationalize it. But like the real kicker in this universe is like this haunted object, A, is really easy to use, and B, seems to work 100% of the time you use it. So it would have been really easy to show the adults, to show the authorities, like, oh yeah, this is exactly what happened.
Yeah,
You can get
that's
possessed.
true.
I'm just like, out of all the different artifacts and ceremonies and all these different horror movies, like this one's probably like the most reliable and the easiest ceremonies. Like talk to me and I let you in. Like, this is the easiest thing.
Everyone
like,
can say it, right?
You can show them, you can demonstrate this 30 seconds and you'll change the entire world. It's like, yeah, there actually is an afterlife and we can summon people.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's true. I mean, there's some big ramifications to that. And yeah, that's a really good point, how easy it is to do. It's just like, oh, you want to prove this? Let's just do it. And that's the thing, going into that first party, like the
intro there, yeah.
Brother, like they're very like hesitant. It's just like, well, this is probably all BS. Like none of this is really true. And then Mia volunteers for it. I was just like, boom, boom, boom. For her, it's instantly real. But even the others, like Jay never does it, right? Like she doesn't like what she's seeing. And she may not even fully believe that it is an actual spiritual thing.
Yeah, she gets freaked out. Does she not do it during that whole montage the second time they had the party at Jade's house?
You know what? I'm not certain that she does, but I could be mistaken.
No,
I don't recall now. I'm
thinking back. It was only 2 days ago, but like I can't remember whether she was in that montage or not. Maybe she didn't.
Because that's the thing, like, especially like say just something simple like alcohol, and you're like 15, 16 years old and alcohol is being passed around. It's like there's going to be a holdout or two of friends who are not going to succumb to that peer pressure, right?
The smart ones, yeah.
The smart ones. It's just like if you were in the shoes, like you were even now as an adult, go to a party and be like, guess what? We have this hand that lets you get possessed for 90 seconds. Do you want to do it? And then somebody does it and they put on like a performance. Maybe they really got possessed. Are you going to try it afterwards? Or are you going to stay strong and be like, no, you know what? I don't want to mess with that stuff.
Well, I think in this case, in the interest of science, Brian, I would have to try this new form of enlightenment. Only for science, though. And that's the only reason I've done heroin and cocaine, is only for the science. No, I've never done heroin, cocaine, as far as you know.
As far as I know. For all our listeners, we really don't know.
It's like I think for the sake of the podcast, we really should go out there just for science, sake.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on that one, I think. But I wanted to say that I think it was kind of neat that you got the impression that the spirits were like in on the party too. Some of them were like truly malevolent, but other ones just seem to be like, oh, I'm possessing this kid, and they're surrounded by other kids and be like, yeah, I'm going to relive some of my youth here. They're just going to like party it up, right? It's just like, I kind of enjoyed, because it was a lottery of which spirit you're going to get.
Every spirit kind of had their own personality, which was really interesting. I'd never seen that before. I think it's left a little bit ambiguous what each spirit's intention was and whether or not they were actually the spirits of the people they said they were. Because I think, like Mia's mom, I don't know if it's ever like in her mind, it's clear that it's her mom, but it's never really confirmed. And some of the stuff that like her mom starts telling her to do things is like, oh, in order to save Riley, I think I can't remember what the original rule was. If you get possessed, it's like, oh, they have you for the rest of your life, or it's just like, or it'll wear off or something. But then Mia's mom's ghost keeps telling her, like, no, the only way to get him out of the reach of these other spirits is to kill him, because these malevolent spirits have him, kill him, and then I can watch over his soul. I can protect him in the afterlife. Yeah. And she's going back and forth, like she doesn't know what to believe. She doesn't have a whole lot of information, right? It's a couple of these frat kids who got this crazy haunted item secondhand from a friend of a friend, or it's the spirit of your dead mother who may or may not have killed herself, may or may not, like, and then it's like, even if it was her mother, as a ghost, if that consciousness is carried through from life, like if she did kill herself, or if that suicide note that her dad eventually read her was real, she's clearly not completely mentally stable to be trusted. Or is that not her mom at all? Is it some other spirit who's playing on her fears, who, interacted with her and got to know her psychically, and is just manipulating her to get into another soul, maybe some evil dead spirits down there who want to swallow their souls, like
Yeah.
I love that ambiguity going back and forth. And maybe that plays into the theme of grief a little bit, with Mia, trying to, rationalize like, oh, her mother, they found her mother. She took, the way she describes it is at first is like, oh, her mother took too many sleeping pills by accident and then couldn't get help in time. And then as soon as you hear, I think for modern viewers, as soon as you hear, oh, somebody took a bunch of sleeping pills, I think there's already that question of, oh, was it intentional or not? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then to have the dad come out, and that's that whole scene where he's like, oh, there's a suicide note that she left. But then there's like, ambiguity is like, oh, was that her actual dad reading that note, or was that the spirit who looked like her dad who read that note?
Yeah.
And so to have that, I think, when somebody dies, especially when somebody dies under those circumstances, you're always trying to kind of process that and rationalize things. And I think, this movie really went along with that theme of, the grieving process for a loved one, especially a loved one who potentially committed suicide, and how to rationalize that, and how to process that specific kind of loss and that specific kind of grief. So it all, like, the themes tied in so well with the plot and with the characters. It was all really, really well done.
Yeah, without a doubt. Really fantastic. Man, what else was going on with this movie? Anything else you want to touch on here before we get into some ratings?
Yeah. No, I loved at one point when Mia's trying to figure out what's going on with Riley, because Riley wakes up at one point, and then he starts to hurt himself again. He's in the bed, and like he looks brutal. The makeup job was amazing.
Oh yeah,
like the kid looked like he had been through some trauma. Ends up on the floor, smashing his head against the tiles, and then is bleeding, and he's licking up the blood off the floor as it's going to the drain. Mia's all freaked out. That whole thing where she's kind of like, she has a thing for Jade's boyfriend because they used to go out.
Yeah.
And there's that scene where she wakes up, or she wakes up and she sees the spirit crawling across the floor and starts sucking on, was it Daniel? Is Daniel's toes?
Yeah.
And then Daniel wakes up and he looks down, and it's actually Mia. She was having like an out of body experience. Mia's sucking on his toes, and it's like this weird thing where it puts you in this state. It's like you don't know if what you're looking at is real, and kind of puts you in Mia's state of mind. There's that scene where, great scene too, building more on the mythology, which in a really subtle way, where Mia's she goes to Riley's bedside after because every time he wakes up, they say like, oh, he keeps trying to kill himself every time he wakes up.
Yeah.
And she goes and tries to use the hand, and it doesn't work because he's unconscious, or maybe it doesn't work because, I don't know, whatever reason. But then she uses it, and she sees the spirit of this little kid.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, oh, I'm looking, do you know where, the spirit of this boy here is? And the little girl spirit is like, yeah, I can show you. And the spirit says, I let you in.
That was so unsettling when it happened. Be like, oh my God, it can go the other direction. It was just like, geez.
Yeah. Yeah. And when she goes in, she sees the visions, I guess, through the spirit's consciousness. And it looks like Riley's being tortured by all these other spirits.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that was such a cool mythology building. So like, if they want to do some sequels in this, there's some cool stuff they could do with the sequels, because it looks like that hand opens the doorway both ways so that you could get into the spirit world. I don't know, maybe meet up with, some friends from, what is it? Not Sinister, but Insidious, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Is it Insidious that had the new movie come out, the Red Door? Yeah. With, not Patrick Bateman, what's his name?
Patrick Wilson.
Patrick Wilson, yeah.
Patrick Bateman. Someone's been watching American Psycho lately.
Yeah, Patrick Wilson. I mean, there's a crossover for you there.
And they are actually doing a sequel to this movie. They've announced it. They're working on it.
Are they? Oh, that's awesome.
And you can see the possibilities for something like this because, there's another hand out there. This hand could still change hands. And sorry, I should not mean to say that. But even at the end of the movie, the hand has moved on to a new group of people. And we see that Mia is now dead and she's a spirit. And the door was opened, and she got to be the spirit possessing this other group of people who were doing the parties.
Got to or had to. That was such a great thing too, because the whole thing with such such a kind of, I don't know what's the other word. I guess say mind fuck. It was a huge mind fuck. It was like the spirit was like,
Yeah.
oh, in order to save Riley, you have to kill him.
Yeah.
And then like, yeah, and there's the one scene where she's getting attacked by the spirit who looks like her dad. Her real dad comes in and she stabs her real dad, like her actual dad, with the scissors in the neck. And she doesn't call like 911 or 999 or whatever the hell it is in Australia. I was like, you left your dad there and he's still alive. It turns out he's still alive. Like Jade goes to visit the house and he's sitting there with like the blanket on his neck. It's like, she doesn't call the hospital either. She leaves.
I got the impression that the father was okay afterwards, but
yeah, in that whole montage. But then she's going and she gets Riley and she takes him in the wheelchair, goes down the highway, and she's gonna kill him because she's got this spirit of her mother, who's really gruesome, by the way. And she's got like the splinters from the door, because the whole story was like she took the sleeping pills, but then she was like scratching on the door trying to get help. She's got the splinters underneath her fingernails and everything. Yeah, like it was totally gross. And she's sitting there on the precipice of like, oh, do I, if I kill him, he's gonna be safe. And it turns out she jumps in front of the cars instead, and she kills herself.
A really surreal scene where she's like walks back to the hospital and like everything seems kind of normal and everyone's walking away from her like through these other doors and like disappearing, and then that slow realization that it's like, oh, I'm dead now. It's just like
it was
she's on the other side.
It was a really unique way to have that kind of closing montage where you see, Riley. If you let the spirits just like give it some time, the spirits will eventually lose their hold on the living. So you see like a scene of like, the family walking away. Walking out. You see the father walking down the hall in the hospital, and as the lights are going out, so it's like, okay, it's almost like this montage. It's interesting. It's like, oh, ghosts may not experience time in the same way. It's like, oh, that's kind of a cool concept as well. I never thought about that. And it gets to the end, like you said, where she sees this hand just floating in space, and she goes and grabs it, and it turns out she's the spirit that's getting summoned by this other group of college kids or frat kids who, that's such a great setup. It's like, oh yeah, the hand could pass, to different groups of people throughout for different sequels. You could have a whole series of this. I wouldn't mind.
A whole series and then prequels too. Like, what's the origins of the hand? And it's just like, the possibilities are limitless. I mean, the horror franchises have always been milked to death. And this one seems like it could, like, like we're already spitballing all these ideas for the movie. We got at least 5 or 6 of these in the bag.
All of our pedestrian ideas that we always complain about, and it's like, what's our first instinct? Make it a franchise. Do all of these same things over again. We're part of the problem.
Like, and that's the trouble. It's like, I think it would be very difficult to recapture the magic that this movie was, especially like kind of like having the unexpected like release of an original breath of fresh air movie. It's just like the next one, we're going to be expecting the same thing, if not more, and it's going to probably be a little bit disappointing, regardless of what happens with it.
Yeah, I'm holding out hope because it was a really cool idea. I hope they don't milk it to death. If we get like, keep it like a nice trilogy or something, like talk to me, talk to us, or maybe the next one's gonna be Let Me In. Then talk to me, let me in. And then I don't know where you go from there.
Yeah, there's all sorts of good possibilities.
But it left so much space to explore. It's such a great mythology. These characters were all great. The actors were great. That whole opening scene set up where the older brother is going to kind of rescue his younger brother at this party, and it looks like, he's all like torn up. He's got all these scratches on his back, and it looks like he's totally high, and he's like super skinny. It looks like a burnout. And the stabbing, and then when he stabs himself in the head is like,
really gnarly.
So brutal. So much great practical effects. So many uses of gore in this. Really creative uses of gore and stuff we haven't seen before, or haven't seen quite in that way. Maybe it's just like hits harder when it's kids getting hurt like that. Maybe that's part of it too. But so much gore, so much great world building and mythology. It's just so cool. Loved it.
Fantastic. Should we get into our ratings of this movie?
Yes, we shall.
All right. So just to refresh the audience here, we use Letterboxd pretty much exclusively for rating movies. They use the 5-star scale with a possible heart to add a little extra bonus on top if that comes out every so often. What is your out of 5-star rating on Talk to Me?
Yeah, so I gave Talk to Me 4 out of 5. Talking with you, I might bump this up to like 4.5 afterwards, because like, I don't know, I'm loving it more and more. There was a point in the movie where after Mia stabbed her dad in the neck, I was like, I hate this character so much. She keeps like doing these stupid things, and she keeps hurting people around her. But I'm like, that's what makes the character feel so real, is that of course she's a flawed person with her own hopes and dreams and wants and failures and triumphs and tragedies.
Being manipulated by forces that she doesn't understand.
Yeah, so she was kind of frustrating to watch, but that's kind of what makes it interesting. Is like, these are teenagers going through things and trying to figure out their own lives. And some of that teenage melodrama, but it didn't feel too melodramatic. But overall, I felt like it's such a breath of fresh air in the horror genre. It's such a great, unique voice to come out. If anything, I can see my rating for this going up. How about you, Brian? What was your overall rating for this movie?
Yeah, so my very first impression, I was giving it 4 out of 5 stars, but
nice.
In the couple of weeks since I've seen the movie, I'm just like, why is it down out of 4? It's got to be 4.5 for me, very clearly. And I honestly don't have anything to like knock against the movie that would justify not bringing it up to 5 stars. So it was like, I'm keeping it at 4.5 right now, but I really do look forward to rewatching this. Probably October, Halloween, it looks like a busy month. Like my movie schedule is pretty packed, but it's like, I do want to watch this again. And I'm hoping that it gets a 4K release on disc. And as soon as I grab that, I'll be watching it again. It'll probably be an easy 5 stars at that time. I think it's just one of the most original horror movies I've seen in a little while. I was really into it the entire time. I couldn't stop thinking about it afterwards. And it's like, that doesn't happen with all movies. Like, sometimes you just walk away, you rate it, and then you just kind of forget about it. Even movies that I've rated 4 stars or even higher, I'm not excited to rewatch them, but I'm really excited to rewatch this movie. This is definitely a standout. As we talked about before, this technically says 2022 on Letterboxd, but it's like, we're going to give ourselves some leeway here. It's like, this is a wide 2023 release. If it so happens to make it onto a top 10 list of 2023, that's perfectly okay. Well, we like to go around the web, and I make you guess at what the ratings are from some of the big review sites like Rotten Tomatoes. We have 2 reviews coming out of Rotten Tomatoes. The tomato meter, take it for what it is. What do you think the critic rating on this movie is? This is 0 to 100%.
Let's go 86.
86. You got to go a bit higher for 95%.
95. Awesome.
That is a fresh movie right there. What do you think the Rotten Tomato audience rating is there?
92.
It's just too high. It's 82, actually.
Okay.
82%. And
really?
The IMDb, they use the 10-star system. What do you think its average is?
8.7.
8.7. I think even for IMDb, that'd be really high.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Let's try, I don't know. Let's try 7.9.
Closer. It's 7.2.
7.2, okay.
It's one of these things where horror movies, a lot of people avoid horror movies. They don't want to be scared, right? And so you don't get the same audience. And we talked about the budget before. The box office was about $69 million worldwide. So you're thinking, this isn't like by the numbers, that's a huge success.
Based on $4 million budget, that's crazy.
But in terms of like overall box office, not a lot of people, like relatively, because it's still a lot of people. It didn't break $100 million, but like for a movie this size, this is a huge success.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people saw it, but it's like, it doesn't have the reach that a lot of other movies would, like a little more mainstream stuff. And this was definitely pretty sure it was like a hard R rating, like adults only watching this film for sure. The last site, Letterboxd, we just described, use a 5-star system. What's its user average on this film?
I'll say 3.6.
You're spot on. 3.6.
Nice. There we go.
You got it. Very nice.
Bound to happen eventually.
Fantastic. Any other comments before we close out here?
I'm just gonna say, yeah, highly recommend this movie. As soon as this comes out on physical media, please, Australia, have a region 1 release. Have pity on us, poor North Americans. Give us a release over here. I will 100%. This is like immediate pickup. Just like I think this is this year's, for me, this feels like this year's Deadstream. Was it this kind of, smaller,
Yeah,
I don't know, indie movie, just kind of came out of nowhere and just kind of grabbed me and wouldn't let me go. It was one of these movies that, there's very few horror movies that actually scare me, but this one I was like, oh yeah, I have to close the closet doors because I'm afraid there's going to be like a face looking at me when I'm going to bed after watching this movie, and very few movies can actually do that. So it was nice to have, like, wasn't the jump scare thing, it was like this really unsettling kind of creepy vibe. And yeah, kudos to the filmmakers, to everyone involved, writers and directors, actors, makeup, effects. This is all stuff that you'd expect to see from like a, 50, 60, 70, $100 million movie. And they did it on essentially like the equivalent of a shoestring budget.
right.
And, this is, when you talk about innovative filmmaking, or, I guess what's the expression? I guess filmmaking based on, what you have available to you, or resources you have, making the most of the resources you have. Like this is a prime example. You take resources you have, and just as an example to other filmmakers, there's so much you can do even on a small budget movie like this.
Yeah,
it's about you have the concept, you have the writing, and you have the filmmaking skill, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can make a great movie.
And that's a wrap on another episode. As always, we appreciate you hanging out with us today and taking the time to listen to our podcast. We have a lot of fun putting these together and hope that you get some enjoyment out of them as well. You can find us online over at realfilmchronicles.com, where we have not just a repository of podcast episodes, but many of our written reviews as well. If you're up to it, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram as well. All the links should be within the show notes here. So until next time, take care of yourself and others, and be sure to enjoy your film journey.